Chapter 1. A Daring Mission. The year was 2257, and humanity had forged a precarious alliance with the Zira, a race of towering warriors who hailed from the barren, storm-scarred planet of Klithos 7. The Zira were renowned across the galaxy as unmatched fighters, known for their impressive strength, telepathic abilities, and an unbreakable warrior code that held honor and courage above all else. At 8 feet tall, with muscular, dark-toned bodies covered in intricate patterns that shifted hues with their emotions, the Zira projected an aura of both power and mystery that made them respected and feared. Despite their physical prowess, the Zira faced an enemy that threatened their very existence, the Karek. The Karek were a ruthless species of insectoid creatures capable of forming massive, coordinated swarms that could devastate entire civilizations in a single assault. The Zira, while able to outmatch individual Karek in strength, found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and ferocity of their enemies. Reluctantly, they reached out to the United Earth Forces, UEF, for assistance, knowing that the survival of both species might depend on their cooperation. Within the ranks of the UEF was Sergeant Alec Hayes, a decorated soldier with a reputation for bravery and a knack for accomplishing the impossible. Alec was known for his ingenuity and quick reflexes, his ability to think on his feet, and his unwillingness to back down even when the odds were stacked against him. When the UEF decided to send a small contingent of human soldiers to assist the Zira in retaking a critical outpost deep within Karek territory, Alec was the first to volunteer. He knew it was likely a suicide mission, but he was determined to prove that humans could be more than just allies of convenience. He wanted to show that they could be comrades worthy of respect. As Alec's ship landed at the Ziran Command Center, a sprawling fortress built from the native stone of Klithos 7, he felt a wave of trepidation. The Ziran soldiers he encountered on the way to the command post were imposing figures, their piercing eyes following him with a mix of skepticism and disdain. Alec was tall by human standards, standing at an impressive 6 feet, but here he felt small, dwarfed by the Ziran warriors around him. He understood their hesitation. To them, he was just another human, fragile, inexperienced, and likely to crack under the pressure of real combat. Alec was assigned to a unit under the command of Vera, a highly respected Ziran warrior known for her formidable combat skills and a stern, no-nonsense demeanor. Vera was a figure of legend among her people, her body marked by deep scars and intricate tattoos that told the story of her many battles. Her voice carried the weight of authority, and her gaze was as sharp as the blade she carried at her side. She sized Alec up with a look of mild contempt, her lips curling slightly as if to convey that she did not expect much from him. "Human," she said, her voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through Alec's chest. "You may be here under the flag of alliance, but do not mistake our kindness for trust. You are here because your superiors think you might be useful. Prove them right, and perhaps I will see you as more than a burden." Alec met her gaze, unflinching. "I didn't come all this way just to sit on the sidelines, Commander Vera. I intend to pull my weight." Vera's expression softened, if only slightly. There was something in Alec's eyes' determination, maybe even a touch of defiance that intrigued her. But she dismissed the thought as quickly as it came. She had no time to coddle fragile humans. This mission was too important, and she couldn't afford distractions. Their convoy set out the next day, navigating the rugged terrain toward the Karek-controlled outpost. Alec, seated in one of the armored transports, felt the tension in the air as they passed through the rocky landscapes, the skies dark with swirling clouds that never seemed to clear on Klithos 7. The planet's harsh climate mirrored the harshness of its inhabitants, and Alec couldn't help but wonder how the Zira had managed to survive here for so long. As they traveled, Alec observed the Ziran soldiers around him, noting the easy way they handled their weapons, the almost primal intensity in their eyes as they prepared for battle. The Zira didn't just fight, they lived and breathed war. It was part of their very being, woven into their culture and identity. Alec respected that, even if he knew it meant they would likely look down on him until he proved himself worthy. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed across the canyon, followed by the unmistakable chittering sound of Karek claws scraping against stone. Alec barely had time to react before the convoy was ambushed, Karek soldiers swarming over the vehicles in a frenzied assault. The insectoid creatures were nightmarish, with glistening exoskeletons, razor-sharp mandibles, and multiple limbs that moved with unnerving speed. Alec sprang into action, firing his rifle and coordinating with the other soldiers, human and Xiran alike. But it quickly became clear that the Karek had the advantage. They outnumbered the convoy and had taken them by surprise. One by one, the Xiran soldiers began to fall, overwhelmed by the relentless onslaught. In the midst of the chaos, Alec spotted Vera, fighting off a group of Karek with a ferocity that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. She was a force of nature, her plasma axe cutting through the Karek like a hot knife through butter. But even she was starting to tire, her movements slowing as the swarm continued to press in. Thinking quickly, Alec scanned the surrounding terrain and spotted a narrow ravine nearby. If they could lure the Karek into the ravine, they might be able to collapse the walls and trap the creatures inside. It was a risky plan, but it was their only chance. Alec sprinted toward Vera, shouting over the din of battle. "Vera, we need to lure them into that ravine. We can collapse it and trap them." Vera hesitated, clearly unaccustomed to taking suggestions from a human. But the desperation in Alec's voice, combined with the dire situation, convinced her to listen. She nodded, and together they began a strategic retreat, drawing the Karek toward the ravine. As they reached the edge of the ravine, Alec activated a series of explosives he had rigged along the walls. The explosion echoed through the canyon, causing the rock to crumble and collapse, burying the Karek under tons of rubble. The few surviving creatures scattered, their morale broken. Breathing heavily, Alec turned to find Vera staring at him with a look of genuine surprise. She had seen humans fight before, but she had never seen one take such a bold, calculated risk in the heat of battle. For the first time, she felt a glimmer of respect for him, a respect that, much to her own surprise, bordered on admiration. As they made their way back to the convoy, battered but alive, Vera looked at Alec with a newfound intensity. "You are different human," she said, her tone carrying a hint of something that might have been approval. "Perhaps I was wrong to doubt your strength." Alec managed a weary smile. "I told you I wasn't here to sit on the sidelines." From that moment, something shifted between them. Alec had proven himself, and in doing so, he had earned a place not just in the convoy, but in Vera's respect, a place that no other human had ever held. Chapter 2. The Bond Ritual. The days following the ambush were tense. Alec noticed a subtle change in how the Xiran soldiers looked at him, but the greatest shift was with Vera herself. No longer did she regard him with the barely masked disdain she had shown on their first meeting. Instead, her gaze now held something more complex, a mix of curiosity, respect, and a silent question he couldn't quite decipher. It was during an evening briefing, as they gathered to review intelligence on the correct movements, that Vera approached Alec with a proposal that caught him completely off guard. "You fought well, human," she said, her deep voice carrying a weight he was only beginning to understand. "Better than I had expected, but I believe that we could accomplish even more if we were to undertake the bond ritual." Alec blinked, certain he'd misheard her. The bond ritual was something he had only heard rumors of, a psychic and physical connection that Xiran warriors undertook with each other in times of dire need. It was an ancient rite, one that required the utmost trust and strength of spirit, and it was almost never performed with an outsider. For Vera to suggest it with a human, Alec knew it was a decision that would have consequences, not just for him but for her as well. I'm honored," he stammered, regaining his composure. "But why would you suggest that with me? Aren't there other Xiran warriors you would trust more?" Vera's expression remained impassive, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something raw. "I have fought beside my people all my life, Alec, but you did something they would not dare. You took a risk, saved us all by thinking beyond the traditional ways of battle. We need that kind of ingenuity. And if we are to succeed in our mission, I believe we must be bonded." Alec felt his pulse quicken. The ritual would allow them to share not only thoughts but also senses, instincts, and, in moments of extreme concentration, even emotions. It was said that bonded Xiran warriors could move as one, anticipating each other's actions in a way that went far beyond mere teamwork. But there were dangers too. The human mind wasn't naturally equipped to handle the telepathic onslaught that bonding entailed, and if his mental defenses were too weak, the link could overwhelm him, driving him to madness or even death. Despite the risks, Alec knew he couldn't refuse. This was the opportunity he'd been waiting for, a chance to prove, once and for all, that humans could be worthy allies of the Zira. Squaring his shoulders, he met Vera's gaze, nodding with determination. "I'm ready. When do we begin?" Vera inclined her head. "Tonight, after the third moon rises." As night fell, Vera led Alec to a hidden cavern deep within the Ziran encampment. The air inside was cool and damp, illuminated by bioluminescent crystals embedded in the stone walls. The light from the crystals bathed the cavern in a soft, otherworldly glow, casting shifting patterns across the walls that made Alec feel as though he had stepped into a dream. Vera knelt before a stone altar at the center of the cavern, motioning for Alec to do the same. Her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and measured. Alec took a deep breath, attempting to steady his own heartbeat, which felt like a drum pounding in his chest. He wasn't entirely sure what to expect, but he had resolved to face whatever came with the same courage he'd shown in battle. Vera began to chant in the Ziran tongue, her voice resonating through the cavern with a rhythm that seemed to echo from the very stones themselves. Alec felt a warmth begin to spread through his body, starting at his chest and radiating outward, filling him with a strange, calming energy. It was as though an invisible thread was winding its way through him, connecting his consciousness to something greater. As the chanting grew in intensity, Alec's vision blurred, and he felt a sudden pull, like he was being drawn into the depths of a whirlpool. He tried to resist, but the force was too strong, and he found himself falling, spiraling into the recesses of his own mind. And then, without warning, he was no longer alone. Flashes of images and sensations flooded his mind, memories that were not his own. He saw scenes of Vera's life, her training as a young warrior, the harsh, disciplined lessons taught by her elders, the fierce pride she took in upholding her people's traditions. He felt her pain as she recalled battles lost and friends who had fallen, their faces flashing briefly before his eyes, only to be replaced by the next memory. Through their connection, Vera, in turn, experienced Alec's memories. His childhood in a war-ravaged city, the sense of loss and yearning he had carried with him after his father's death, and his determination to make something of himself. She saw his years of military training, the close bonds he'd formed with his squadmates, and the sorrow of losing them one by one. Alec could feel her surprise as she absorbed his experiences, her understanding of him deepening in ways words could never convey. But as they delved deeper, Alec felt the bond beginning to strain, an ache forming in the back of his skull as the sheer intensity of the connection started to overwhelm him. He gritted his teeth, struggling to maintain his mental defenses, but it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave with his bare hands. The more Vera's emotions and memories flooded into him, the more difficult it became to separate her thoughts from his own. Sensing his struggle, Vera tightened her own mental focus, easing the flow of information between them. "You're doing well, Alec," her voice echoed in his mind, softer and more gentle than he'd ever heard it. "Do not resist. Let the bond guide you, and trust in it." Drawing strength from her words, Alec relaxed, allowing himself to surrender to the connection. As he did, the pain in his head began to subside, replaced by a sense of clarity that he had never experienced before. He could feel Vera's presence within him, not as a foreign intrusion, but as an extension of himself's second heartbeat, a second mind intertwined with his own. Together, they explored the edges of their bond, testing its limits and marveling at the depth of their connection. Alec found that he could sense Vera's every thought, her every emotion as clearly as if they were his own. He felt her strength, her courage, and her fierce loyalty to her people. And, to his surprise, he sensed something else, an undercurrent of fear that she kept buried deep within her heart. Without thinking, Alec reached out to her through their bond, offering her his own courage, his determination. He showed her his memories of standing alone in the face of danger, of the times he had pushed past his own fear to protect those he cared about. It was a small gesture, but he could feel her respond, her mental barriers softening as she allowed herself to trust him. By the time the ritual ended, Alec felt as though a part of him had been fundamentally altered. He was no longer the same man who had entered the cavern. He was bound to Vera now, their minds and souls entwined in a way that went beyond mere partnership. And he could sense that she felt it too, that, for better or worse, They were connected in a way that no one could ever fully understand. As they rose to their feet, Alec met Vera's gaze, a newfound understanding passing between them without a single word spoken. She nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "We are bound now, human," she said, her voice carrying a warmth that had not been there before. "Let us see what this bond can achieve." Alec nodded, his own smile mirroring hers. He could feel her strength within him, and he knew that, together, they were capable of facing whatever the Correct threw at them. For the first time, he felt that he truly belonged not just as an ally, but as a part of something greater. Their bond was both a promise and a challenge, one that would test the limits of their courage and trust. And as they left the cavern, Alec felt a quiet certainty settle over him. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Chapter 3. A Test of Strength. The bond Alec shared with Vera had left him changed in ways he was only beginning to comprehend. In the days that followed, he found himself able to sense her presence, her thoughts and emotions, like a faint echo in the back of his mind. Their connection had transcended mere camaraderie. They were now bound in ways that went beyond the physical and mental, and the depth of their bond allowed them to move and think in unison. For Alec, the bond was exhilarating, a shared strength that gave him a sense of belonging he hadn't felt before. But it was also daunting. He could feel Vera's expectations weighing heavily on him, a reminder of the immense responsibility that came with being a bonded partner to a Xeran warrior. The true test of their bond came sooner than they anticipated. Intelligence reports indicated that the Correct were massing for an assault on the outpost, a massive swarm that would dwarf the previous ambush. The Correct were relentless, and Alec knew that if they didn't find a way to stop them, the outpost and potentially the entire region would be overrun. Preparations for the defense began immediately, with Alec and Vera working side by side to strategize and rally their forces. As they stood on the battlements, surveying the rocky plains that stretched out before them, Alec felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. Through their bond, he could feel Vera's confidence, her unwavering focus on the task at hand. She was a pillar of strength, her mind clear and resolute, and Alec found himself drawing on her resolve, letting it steady his own nerves. "Do you feel it?" Vera asked, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Alec nodded. "Yes, it's like I can sense them, like a shadow on the edge of my mind." Vera gave a grim smile. "That is the bond at work. The Correct are close. Our connection allows us to sense their presence, their intentions. It is both a gift and a curse." Alec understood what she meant. The bond heightened their senses, allowing them to detect even the slightest disturbance in the air, the faintest tremor in the ground. But it also meant that they were constantly aware of each other's fears and doubts. There was no hiding, no shielding oneself from the emotions that passed through the bond. It was raw, unfiltered, and at times, overwhelming. The hours passed slowly, the tension building as the Correct swarm drew closer. Alec could feel the anticipation thrumming through the minds of the Xeran soldiers around him, their fierce determination to protect their home mingling with a simmering fear of the impending battle. Vera, however, remained unshaken, her resolve a steady presence in Alec's mind. He took comfort in her strength, letting it bolster his own courage. Finally, the Correct swarm appeared on the horizon, a dark, writhing mass that stretched as far as the eye could see. The creatures moved with a terrifying unity, their movements coordinated and precise, like a single organism driven by a relentless hunger. Alec felt a shiver run down his spine as he watched them approach, their mandibles clicking, their claws scraping against the ground with an eerie rhythm that echoed through the valley. Vera turned to him, her expression serious. "Are you ready, Alec?" He met her gaze, feeling the weight of her trust settle over him. "I'm ready." With a nod, Vera raised her plasma axe, the blade crackling with energy as she signaled the start of the battle. The Xeran soldiers responded with a roar, their war cries echoing across the battlefield as they charged forward to meet the Correct. Alec fell in beside Vera, his rifle at the ready, his senses heightened by the bond. The first wave of Correct hit them like a tidal wave, a churning mass of claws and mandibles that surged forward with relentless ferocity. Alec fired his rifle in controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark as he moved in perfect sync with Vera. Through their bond, He could feel her every movement, her every intention, and he found himself anticipating her attacks with a precision that bordered on instinct. As the battle raged, Alec and Vera moved as one, their bond allowing them to react with a speed and efficiency that left the Karek reeling. They fought back to back, Alec's rifle providing cover, while Vera's plasma axe cut through the Karek like a blazing blade of light. The creatures fell in droves, their bodies piling up around them as they pushed forward, refusing to be overwhelmed. But the Karek were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. For every creature they killed, 3 more took its place, their screeching cries filling the air as they closed in from all sides. Alec felt his energy waning, his muscles aching as the strain of the battle began to take its toll. He could feel Vera's fatigue as well, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps as she struggled to maintain her relentless pace. Just when it seemed they might be overwhelmed, a massive Karek war beast emerged from the swarm, its towering form covered in thick, armored plates that glinted in the dim light. The creature was easily twice the size of any other Karek, its limbs bristling with spines, and its mandibles snapping with a hunger that sent a chill through Alec's veins. "Alec," Vera said, her voice a steady presence in his mind. "We must bring it down, or the outpost will fall." He nodded, his mind racing as he assessed the situation. The war beast was heavily armored, its weak points hidden beneath layers of chitin that would be nearly impossible to penetrate. But Alec's bond with Vera gave him an idea, a risky plan that would require perfect coordination and absolute trust. "Vera," he said, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart, "I need you to trust me. When I give the signal, strike the creature's left leg with everything you've got." Vera hesitated, her doubt filtering through the bond. No Xiran would rely on such a bold, unpredictable maneuver. But Alec's confidence bolstered her, and after a moment's hesitation, she nodded, her grip tightening on her axe. As the war beast lunged toward them, Alec darted to the side, drawing its attention with a series of quick, calculated shots that struck its exposed joints. The creature roared, its mandibles snapping as it turned to follow him, leaving its left leg vulnerable. "Now, Vera!" Alec shouted through the bond, pouring his intent into the thought. With a fierce battle cry, Vera charged forward, her plasma axe blazing with energy as she brought it down on the war beast's leg. The creature staggered, its balance disrupted as the joint gave way under the force of her blow. Taking advantage of its momentary weakness, Alec leaped onto the creature's back, his hands reaching for the explosive charges he had strapped to his belt. As he planted the charges on the creature's exposed spine, Alec felt a surge of adrenaline, his heartbeat syncing with Vera's as their bond surged with a shared purpose. He leaped clear just as the explosives detonated, a shockwave of heat and light ripping through the creature as it collapsed in a heap of smoking chitin. The remaining Karek, sensing the fall of their war beast, hesitated, their movements faltering as confusion rippled through their ranks. The Xiran soldiers seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage and driving the Karek back with a renewed fury. Within moments, the tide of the battle had shifted, the swarm retreating in disarray as the Xira surged forward, their war cries echoing in triumph. As the dust settled, Alec found himself standing beside Vera, their bond humming with a shared sense of victory. She looked at him, her eyes alight with a fierce pride that warmed him to his core. "You did well, Alec," she said, her voice carrying a warmth he had not heard before. "You fought as one of us." He smiled, feeling the weight of her words settle over him. "I couldn't have done it without you, Vera. We're stronger together. As bonded partners." Vera nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "Yes, Alec. Together, we are unstoppable." They stood in silence, their bond a steady pulse between them, a reminder of the strength they had found in each other. The battle was won, but they both knew that this was only the beginning of their journey. Together, they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. And as they turned to face the horizon, Alec felt a quiet certainty settle over him, a certainty that, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. Chapter 4. Beyond the Battlefield. The aftermath of the battle left the outpost in a tense but victorious calm. The Xiran soldiers moved among the fallen Karek, salvaging what they could and tending to their own wounded. Alec and Vera remained near the shattered remains of the Karek war beast, catching their breaths as they surveyed the scene. The day's events had solidified their bond not just in action, but in the eyes of the Ziran soldiers around them. Alec could feel a mixture of surprise and grudging respect emanating from the Zira as they watched him stand beside Vera, the two of them bound by the ritual that had made him part of her world. It was a world Alec had never expected to enter, let alone understand. But here he was, having earned his place among a people who once regarded him with nothing but skepticism. The following day, Alec and Vera were summoned before the Ziran High Council, a panel of elder warriors and strategists who held considerable sway in military decisions. Though Alec had heard of the council's influence, he hadn't expected to stand before them so soon or at all. They were seated in a large hall, the stone walls decorated with banners and insignias symbolizing countless battles. Their eyes bore into him with a severity that rivaled Vera's first gaze upon him. As they entered, Vera gave him a brief nod, a silent reassurance that she would stand by his side. The council members were an imposing sight, each bearing scars and symbols of their rank and experience. The eldest among them, a warrior named Corval, leaned forward, his piercing gaze fixed on Alec. "You are the human known as Alec Hayes," he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying an authority that demanded respect. "It has been brought to our attention that you engaged in a bond ritual with one of our finest warriors. This is unprecedented." Alec glanced at Vera, feeling her encouragement through their bond. Standing tall, he met Corval's gaze. "I did, Elder Corval, and I would do it again, without hesitation. The bond gave us the strength to fight together, to defeat the Karek where we might have otherwise fallen." Corval's expression remained impassive, but Alec could sense a flicker of intrigue in his eyes. "And do you understand the gravity of what you have done, human? The bond ritual is sacred to us, a right reserved for those who have proven themselves worthy in the eyes of our people." Vera stepped forward, her voice steady and respectful. "Elder Corval, Alec has proven himself in battle. He saved our convoy, risked his life to protect us, and has shown strength and courage beyond what we expected. I chose to bond with him because I believe he is worthy." A murmur ran through the council chamber as the other elders exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Corval raised a hand, silencing them. "Very well," he said, his gaze shifting between Alec and Vera. "If you believe him worthy, Vera, then we shall honor your decision. But there is another matter to discuss." Corval leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "The correct threat is far from over. Intelligence reports suggest that the swarm you encountered was merely a scouting party. Their main force is still gathering, preparing for an assault that could wipe out not just this outpost, but the entire region." The weight of his words settled over Alec like a lead blanket. They had barely survived the last encounter. The idea of facing an even larger swarm was daunting. He felt Vera's presence steadying him, her determination infusing him with a sense of purpose. Corval continued, "We have devised a plan, one that will require a joint strike force of both Ziran and human soldiers. The Karek have established a hive deep within the Klithos Mountains, a stronghold that we must eliminate to prevent their invasion. It will be dangerous, and there is no guarantee of survival. But if we succeed, we may turn the tide of this war." Alec felt a surge of adrenaline at the prospect of the mission. It was a gamble, but it was also an opportunity to prove that the bond he shared with Vera could be a force for change, a symbol of what humanity and the Zira could achieve together. He turned to Vera, seeing the same resolve mirrored in her eyes. "We'll do it," Alec said, his voice firm. "We'll lead the strike force." The council members exchanged glances, and Corval nodded slowly. "Very well. The bond you share has brought you victory once. Perhaps it will do so again." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Alec and Vera worked tirelessly, coordinating strategies, training alongside both human and Ziran soldiers, and ensuring that their teams were ready for the assault. Despite the urgency of their mission, Alec found moments of quiet reflection, times when he and Vera would sit together in silence, their bond a comforting presence that needed no words. Through their connection, Alec sensed layers of Vera he hadn't known before, moments of vulnerability, memories of loss, and a fierce loyalty to her people that went beyond mere duty. She, in turn, saw in him the depth of his commitment, his willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause he believed in. They had become more than bonded partners. They were a single unit, two beings moving with a shared purpose. On the eve of the mission, Alec found himself standing with Vera on a ridge overlooking the valley, the setting sun casting long shadows over the rocky landscape. The air was thick with the scent of dust and iron, a reminder of the battles they had fought and the challenges that lay ahead. "Tomorrow," Vera said, her voice barely a whisper, "we face the greatest test of our bond." Alec nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "Whatever happens, I want you to know. I'm honored to fight beside you, Vera. You've shown me strength, courage, and a loyalty that I've never known before." She turned to him, her eyes softening. "And you have shown me that humans are not as fragile as I once thought. You have earned a place in our world, Alec. A place I never thought I would offer to anyone." They stood in silence, their bond humming with a quiet understanding that needed no words. In that moment, Alec knew that no matter what happened in the battle ahead, he and Vera would face it together. The dawn of the assault arrived with the sound of drums and the chanting of Xeran warriors. Alec and Vera led their strike force into the Clithos Mountains, navigating the treacherous terrain with a precision that only their bond could provide. The Karek hive loomed ahead, a massive structure carved into the side of the mountain, its twisted architecture pulsating with an ominous energy. The battle that followed was unlike any Alec had experienced. The Karek fought with a desperation that bordered on madness, their forces pouring from the hive like a torrent. But Alec and Vera moved as one, their bond guiding their every step, their every strike. They were a force of nature, a storm of fury and precision that cut through the enemy ranks with an unstoppable momentum. At the heart of the hive, they confronted the Karek Queen, a monstrous creature with glistening mandibles and eyes that burned with a malevolent intelligence. The Queen's psychic scream echoed through the hive, filling Alec's mind with a searing pain that threatened to shatter his thoughts. But Vera was there, her presence a shield that blocked out the Queen's influence. Together, they attacked, their bond giving them the strength to withstand the Queen's assault. Alec fired a high-explosive round into her chest, while Vera struck with her plasma axe, her blade carving through the Queen's armored hide. In a final, desperate surge, they brought the creature down, their victory reverberating through the hive as the Karek forces fell into disarray. As the hive collapsed around them, Alec and Vera fought their way back to safety, their bond carrying them through the chaos. By the time they emerged from the mountains, the Karek threat had been vanquished, and the tide of the war had turned. In the days that followed, Alec and Vera were hailed as heroes, their bond a symbol of hope and unity between their people. But for Alec, the greatest reward was the connection he had forged with Vera, a bond that transcended species, culture, and even the boundaries of the mind. Standing side by side, they looked out over the valley, their future uncertain but their purpose clear. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Alec knew they would face them together, bound by a strength that went beyond the battlefield. And in that moment, he realized that he had found a new home not in a place, but in a bond, in a warrior who had shown him what it truly meant to belong.